Fabulous. Well, let's hop in. Our lesson today is finding motivated sellers and preparing to win the listing. So last week and well, I guess it was the last two sessions have been about buyers, right? Talking about working with buyers. And now we're going to talk about working with sellers. And we will go over the listing agreements in the next few days as well, the next few sessions as well. I don't remember exactly what the schedule is. I think it's probably on Tuesday, but don't hold me to that because I'm not looking at it right now. So anyways, welcome to Rev Up. It says module 10. We're all out of order. So just don't worry. Don't feel like you missed, 9 other modules because we've bounced around. I have no idea what number we're on at this point. So anyways, welcome. Let's get started. As always, if you have questions as we dive through this material, please don't hesitate to unmute yourself and ask those questions. I do have the chat box up, so I'm kind of keeping an eye on that as well. I also have just a little cheat sheet. I have the list of participants up and it shows me your microphone so I can see if you unmute yourself. So I usually kind of, know if you have a question. So I do keep an eye on that as well, but never hesitate just to interrupt me and let me know you have a question. Today we're going to cover the circles of opportunity, or how to find qualified and motivated sellers, customizing your Realty One Group listing presentation. I'll show you where to find that, the 7 steps in a listing process, how to qualify sellers, using the pre-listing questionnaire, effective research and preparation, the components of a pre-listing packet and how to set yours up, how to determine an accurate price range, through a comparative market analysis. I'm going to try to zip through some of the other stuff so I can really show you that hands-on is my intention. So hopefully we can get there. Or hold on, let me just double check my calendar to make sure I don't commit myself to something. Oh, I don't have anything right after this too. So if I go a little longer and I show you guys how to do a CMA, then you guys will have that in your toolbox. Hopefully you can stick around if we run over on time. But that's a really fun thing. Scripts and dialogues for sellers as well, we'll be going over. So let's go ahead and plug right along. Hold on, because my windows are all out of whack right now. So let me fix that real quick so I can see my screen. There we go. All right. So you'll always hear me say you should be listing focused. Be listing focused. As new agents, oftentimes it's easier to secure buyers. They're running around with no agents, like attending open houses, doing things that let you know that they're, a target waiting for somebody to swoop them up and show them houses. Anastasia's working with the Zillow program. So a lot of those are going to be buyer leads. So it's easier as a new agent to pick up buyers, but just always keep in mind that you should be focused on listings. And the reason we want to focus on listings is it gives us greater control over our time. We don't have to go hop in our car and go show them properties for 4 hours a day on a Saturday, right? We know what's going on with the listing. We can schedule those appointments, schedule our photos, pre-listing inspections. We don't have to be there during showings. In addition, it helps us build reputation in our marketplace because people are seeing us the other agents are seeing us on the MLS and we're interacting with them. So we're building those relationships, as well as you've got your sign in the yard. So people are seeing your name. You're going to be hosting open houses. They're going to see your name again, right? So it just helps to build that reputation. If we're sending out our just listed, just sold postcards, coming soon, then it's just continuing to build that brand identification. And just for the record, brand identification when it comes to real estate is about you. It's not about the company. Okay. They're not going to necessarily realize Realty One. They probably won't even remember what company you work for, but they're going to remember your name and your face. You can handle considerably more transactions with listings than with buyers, right? This goes back to the fact that we're not jumping in cars and showing them around and having to be there for every little piece of the transaction. So you can have more listings and feel like you have your life back than working with buyers. And most become buyers, right? Which result in additional transactions. Oftentimes, most of my business is like double transactions. I'm either getting a listing and then a purchase, or I'm getting a listing and a referral to another agent out of the area, right? So it results in more transactions. Also, keep in mind that we're going to use that listing for leverage. to generate more leads. It's a lead generation activity because statistics tell us that when we have a sign in the yard, somebody else that can see that sign is going to list their house for sale. So that's why we want to focus in on really searching for those sellers. We don't want to ignore those buyers because those buyers bring us lots of money. And eventually those buyers are going to be sellers too, right? So super exciting. And a buyer may also refer us to additional sellers. And never hesitate, if you get a buyer that comes in that you're connecting with that wants to buy a house, always ask them if they have a house to sell. Because remember, even if it's not local, we can help connect them with a solid agent wherever that house is located, and we can collect a referral fee. In case you're like, Amy, what does that mean? It means that, hey, Anastasia, I'm going to refer to you my seller because I'm not in the area. I'm going to collect 30% of that commission. Anastasia is going to get 70% of it just for me connecting them with that seller. On my seller referrals, I oftentimes collect a 30% referral fees. On my buyer referrals, I usually collect a 25% referral fee, right? And this goes back to the same thing. Those listing leads, way more valuable than buyers. So I collect a higher rate for connecting somebody with a seller listing. Any questions about why we should be motivated to find sellers?
Not yet.
Okay. I click on something wrong, then it doesn't change my slide. There's lots of different ways to find motivated sellers, right? We've already talked about our lead gen, different types of lead gen, that you should have 5 legs of lead gen, one being your database, right? Or your sphere of influence, which is there on the little screen there, this bubble, you probably can't read it. Through your database, you're going to get referrals, which is right here in this little gold bubble, right? In addition, you're going to get leads from other listings, right? So we already talked about that. And then you should have 3 other ways of lead gen to identify seller and buyer leads. Motivated sellers look for life events. You can do it through door knocking, specialized groups, referrals. You also have Craigslist, probate sales, expired FSBOs, out-of-state owners, garage sales, and circle of influence, right? So people who are having garage sales, sometimes they're spring cleaning and sometimes they're preparing to sell their house. So it's a good idea to go cruise some garage sales on the weekends. Have conversations with the owners. Oh, this is a really neat garage sale. It looks like you're getting rid of a lot of stuff. Are you just spring cleaning? Oh no, we're thinking about selling our house, right? Great conversation. Great way to pick up seller leads. Let's see, life events. I picked up a seller, actually it was 2 transactions, seller and buyer, on Facebook, because I was scrolling through my friends list and somebody posted something about needing to convert their enclosed patio into more actual living space because they had another baby and they just didn't fit in their house anymore. And I said, instead of like converting a house, let's sell this one and get you a better house. And they were like, I don't even know if we can do that. So I said, well, worst case scenario, we talked to a lender, you decide you don't want to do it, but at least you have the information. So I connected them with a lender, got the listing and the purchase. So right, life events, pay attention to what people have going on. Are they having babies? Are their kids moving out of the house, right? Are there divorces happening, right? Are there deaths happening? So all sorts of things inside that life event. Specialized groups, again, that goes back to like connecting with people you have things in common with on either in person or social media, creating groups of similar people so that you can connect and gain those transactions that way. So lots of different ways to find motivated sellers. I do not know why my whole toolbar just popped up, but maybe it'll go away here in a minute. Formula, let's see, formula for a successful script, right? Scripts are an essential part of the industry. Many people in the beginning object to learning scripts. You don't want to sound scripted, so it's okay to tweak a script so it sounds more like you. I would read through it a few times without tweaking it. I would practice it a few times without tweaking it. I would just run through it, practice it, learn it, internalize it, and then begin tweaking it so it sounds more like you. But sometimes what sounds scripted to us does not sound scripted to the person on the other side of the conversation, so it's okay, right? The more that we understand and know scripts, and the more that we understand our objection handlers, then the more confident we will sound in having conversations. It will help to eliminate stuttering and stammering. It will give you audible pauses where you can stop and you can wait for a response. They allow us to provide consistent service to our clients, right? Because we're using the same words to deliver the same message over and over again, right? If you go into One University, you can simply search like seller leads and it will come up with scripts that you can utilize and pursue for whatever method of lead generation that you're doing in order to bring in more seller leads. Okay. Any questions about scripts? You can think of it, if you don't like the word script, right? Like some people have an aversion to the word budget. Some people, same thing about script. You can use the word like planned conversations. I'm practicing for planned conversations, right? Conscious conversations. There's lots of different ways to spin that where it's not necessarily a script. You're just preparing yourself in advance for those conversations that you're going to have. Anastasia, did you have a question or something you wanted to share?
No, I was just going to say that I didn't have any questions.
All right. The easiest way to memorize them is to repeat them over and over and over again. And everybody learns differently. So everybody's going to internalize or memorize those conversation starters or those scripts in a different way. So I recommend trying some different methods before you decide how you're going to best internalize it. Some people may do it just by reading through it. You don't even have to practice with somebody. Just reading through that script multiple times will help commit it to memory. Some people like to write things down. So copy that script down. I recommend saying it out loud as you're writing it down. And as you finish a sentence, go back and repeat that sentence or go back and reread what you've written up to that point at each sentence, because that will help you to internalize it as well. And then once you've had time to kind of practice it, go through it, get a script partner, get somebody you can practice with, look on the screen and see who's in this session today, who else are other agents kind of in the same position that you are in the office. Reach out to somebody and say, hey, 30 minutes a day, I want to go through a script with you. I just want to like run through it, have you, ask me questions. I can be the client for, the first 15 minutes. You can be the client for the second 15 minutes, and just do some role play and practice. It will benefit you in your business. I promise. If you have problems reading things and saying things or speaking out loud, go buy some Dr. Seuss books. I swear this works. Go buy some Dr. Seuss books and read Dr. Seuss books out loud. They are tongue twisters. They have random words. Once you get proficient at being able to read through Dr. Seuss books, you'll be good at reading just about anything. Okay. There's your little tidbit for the day. All right. We want to make sure in our daily calendar, our weekly calendar, that we have blocked time for lead generation. Okay, we talked about time blocking already. We're going to reiterate it right here. And this gives you a little different way to think about it, although I'll give you a second little spin here in a moment. They recommend that we give ourselves 3 hours a day for lead generation. And if you're like, oh my gosh, Amy, I can't be on the phone for 3 hours. Number one, nobody said anything about phones. So you could do door knocking for lead generation, right? There's lots of options there that you can do for lead generation. It doesn't always entail being on the phone. Although part of lead generation is reaching into your database. There's no exceptions to that. You should be calling the people that already know you, love you, and trust you on a regular basis, generally no less than once per quarter. So once every 3 months, you're calling through that list. You can spread it out over the course of 3 months. There's lots of different ways to do that. This world, when you're in your time blocked prospecting or lead generation time, you should turn off the notifications on your computer and on your phone. We do not want to be distracted with Facebook and text messages and phone calls that we are not making out, right? So we do not want to be distracted during this time because we want it to be focused time. I highly recommend starting your lead generation time with a daily affirmation, 1 or 2 positive things, and you could make it about whatever the lead gen is that you're doing, right? So if I was going to go door knocking, then it might be people are going to be excited to see me when I knock on their door. I'm going to have great conversations today about what's going on in the real estate market, and I'm going to book one listing appointment, right? So we can say those things out loud before we dive into our lead generation or our prospecting, so that we begin to internalize and feel those positive affirmations coming out in our conversations. Okay. You can spend your first hour of lead gen preparing. So if we have 3 hours blocked every day, our first hour is going to be focused on preparing. Who are we going to call? What neighborhood are we going to walk? What are we taking with us? If it's something where you're like a farm, right? And maybe you already have your materials that you're going to walk, and you already have your idea, you have it pre-planned, like the first week of the month, I do these houses, or the second day, or whatever it is, then you can always use that prepare time to, number one, go over script. What am I going to say to people when they answer the door? Or number two, what are we doing next month, right? So you can set yourself up for success in advance. If you're going to be making phone calls, you should be preparing to make those phone calls. What script are you going to use? Who are you going to call, right? Who's on your list? If you are door knocking for an open house, then what doors are you going to knock? Do you have something to take with you to leave behind in case somebody doesn't answer the door that tells them what house it is, when those open houses are going to be, right? So what do you have going on? So you're going to prepare in that first hour. Second hour is going to be prospecting. That's going to be the door knocking, the phone calls, whatever it is that you're doing that day for prospecting. That's going to be hour 2. And hour 3 is going to be your follow-up, right? So we're going to enter notes. We're going to update our database. We're going to make sure everything, if we wrote down notes as we were door knocking, we're now going to put that stuff into our database so that next time we go door knocking, we know exactly what it was that we had conversations about. We'll know who answered the door, who didn't answer their door. If you had a conversation with somebody over the phone about their dog not being well, you're going to write down what was going on with their dog and what their dog's names were. So you're going to want to make sure that you take all of those notes. If there was somebody you were supposed to follow up with later, if there was a calendar appointment you were supposed to book, put that in there. Our CRM, the OneSuite, allows us to book future tasks. And if you have it on your phone, it will alert you when that task comes due. So if you said, oh, I'll check in with you in a week, put a little task in there under that contact so it reminds you to check in a week later, right? If we continually automate our database, our CRM, our contact relationship manager, then it's going to tell us who we're going to call each day as we move forward. So these first 3 months, we may feel like we're flailing a little bit, but then come into the second quarter, it's going to say, oh, we talked to this person today. So we were supposed to, or 3 months ago. So we're supposed to touch base with them today, right? So it'll tell you who you should call and check in with so that you're doing those systematic touches. Okay. So that's hour 1, 2, and 3 of your lead gen. Now, my only thing is with hour 2 prospecting, it's kind of vague. I don't like vague. I like specifics. So if I'm just starting out, my second hour of prospecting, instead of like, I'm just going to make phone calls for an hour, I'm going to door knock for an hour, it may be a goal, right? So when we looked at what your goals were for the year, how many appointments did you need to have this year? Was it 1? Was it 2? Was it per week? I'm thinking per week. Were you supposed to be making, how many people are in your database? How many calls are you supposed to be making in order to get through your database in 3 months, right? If we took out, 3 months is 4 weeks per month. So it's 12 weeks. And we're going to figure that a week of that is like out of there. So really you've got 11 weeks, assuming you don't have any vacations planned, but we're just going to take that 1 week out in case like something happens, you get sick or, things happen, life happens. So let's give ourselves a buffer zone. So 11 weeks. Do you have any vacations planned in those 11 weeks? Are there holidays in those 11 weeks that we need to account for? Okay, now we're down to 10 weeks for this next quarter. And if we take all the contacts in our database divided by 10 weeks, if we had 300 people in there, we've got to talk with 30 people a week. So what does that amount to on a daily basis? Are you going to make phone calls 5 days a week? Are you door knocking 2 days a week and calling 3 days a week? Kind of plan that out and figure out how many contacts do I need to make on a weekly basis or on a daily basis based on what my plans are for lead generation and prospecting, right? So back it off so that you can make those exact numbers and know exactly what you need to have going on. If your goal is, man, I just need 2 appointments every week, then you may be like, throw this out the window. I'm lead generating on Monday for up to 5 hours if I have to book those appointments so that I don't need to lead generate the rest of the week. I'm totally okay with that. Okay, so it's totally up to you how you do it, but this gives you some guidelines and some help as to what you should do during that time, or what you need to account for. Okay, if we time blocked 3 hours to go door knock our farm, but we didn't time block any time for the preparation or the follow-up, we need to make sure we get that on our calendars as well. Any questions about prospecting? Okay, fabulous. In addition to prospecting, we need to track our actions. Okay, please, please, please track your actions. These are called your key performance indicators, or your KPIs. Okay, so we need to know what did we do today? How successful were we? So did we door knock today? How many doors did we knock? How many people answered their doors? How did that go? So we're going to track all of that information and if we're making phone calls, how many numbers did we dial? How many people answered? Did we book any appointments, right? That's going to help us understand how many doors need to be knocked or how many calls need to be made in order to get ourselves an appointment. Okay, we're going to track our appointments, how many appointments to a signed listing agreement or signed buyer representation agreement, and how many signed listing agreements and how many signed buyer representation agreements to get to a closed transaction. So we want to track all of that stuff so that we know where we need to go this next year based on our previous year's indicators, right? So on here, right? So it's got like face-to-face calls, conversations, open houses. How many hours did you spend doing it, right? Track all of that stuff. All right, preparing to win the listing. Number one, you need to customize your listing presentation. If you don't have one, we have one for you. So if you go into the OneZone, so you go to your One login and you go to OneZone. Hold on, I just have to figure out how to get my mouse to the right page. Right here, inside of OneZone, over here on marketing. So you go to the OneZone and then you go to marketing. It has listing presentations right there. It's got a couple different options. It's got a 2019, it's got a 2020 new listing presentation. It's got a 2020 new listing presentation vertical. That one's kind of weird. It's like long and skinny. Let's see if it opens. This might be the long and skinny one. I think it's angry with me. So, right. So you're going to go in there. You can open this up. You can save it to your Google Drive. It's a PowerPoint presentation, but don't worry. You can upload it into your Google Drive. If you have Google and you don't have PowerPoint, open it up in slides, and then it'll allow you to tweak it and personalize it. You can update the photos on it. You should put your information on there. Make sure all the information is accurate. So you're going to put all of that stuff in here so that you have a complete, ready to go listing presentation. Okay. Did anybody have questions about how to get to that listing presentation?
Nope, I'm following you.
Cool. I highly recommend that you, hold on, I got to tweak my screen a little bit because I lost you guys. That you do a little bit of homework on it as well, because the reality is we don't necessarily want to just print it up on like your home printer and take it with us. We'd like it to be a little nicer. So maybe give, like your local office store a call, or look online for places that you can send it that may, like spiral bound it with maybe a couple pockets so you could tuck in comparative market analysis of the property, right? Or some things like that. So a little place for your card to put in there so that it looks nice and professional. It could be just like a nice folder. We want it to print nicely. So you may want to check with the office and see what the cost is to print it in color. Please print it in color. Or you could just keep it as a PowerPoint, right? So I don't like digital presentations. I'm sorry, I'm not a fan. I don't like bringing my computer. I feel like it's a distraction. I'd rather have something in writing, something in paper that they can keep with them. It's up to you. This is set up to be a digital presentation, or you can print it out. So it's up to you how you decide you want to do that and what you like to do. Mine could be, because I'm old, because as Anastasia pointed out, my birthday's this weekend, and I just like paper things over digital things. I'm trying to, come around. I've come a long ways, but I'm just not quite, with the younger crowd. So anyways, there you go. Make sure that you update it. In your listing presentation, if you're like, Amy, I don't like this listing presentation, that's okay. You could like R&D it, rip and duplicate it. You could take the pieces that you like, leave the pieces that you don't like, add things that you want to add. I highly recommend that you put in there what your background is and what makes you uniquely qualified to sell their property, right? What's your value proposition? And you may be like, Amy, I'm brand new. Okay, well, don't put how long you've been in the industry, but just tell them, if you've been buying and selling homes for 10 years because you bought and sold your own homes, then you have that experience, right? So 10 years experience. Or if your mentor is working with you and your mentor's been in the business for a while, like, bring that in with you, right? So figure out how to spin it to make it yours, and to add your value proposition. You want to make sure that you have your company identified and how your company supports you and the seller, right? What tools do we have at Realty One Group that's going to help support our sellers and get their property sold? If you have a team, make sure to highlight that. Even if it's just a transaction coordinator, even if we're using the transaction coordinator in the office, get a headshot from her, right? Get a little bit of information. Put her in there as part of your team, because she is, okay? You're going to put in your market knowledge, right? The pricing or market research. So that'd be like your comparative market analysis. How you target buyers that you've determined most likely for their property, right? So what's your marketing plan? Other marketing techniques you've chosen to find additional buyers. And keep in mind, the bigger you grow your database, because we're going to send that listing out to the database, as well as we're going to kick it into the like the Realty One Group before it even comes on the market, the Foxhole. So you can say, you've got a database of thousands of customers that you're going to get this in front of before it even hits the market, right? So just think about things and how to spin them appropriately. Don't make lies. Marketing techniques you've chosen to find buyers. What online strategies are you using? Where is that home going to be posted? What strategies are you using with social media? What platforms to get it in front of people? Marketing to agents with listings and recent sales in the same price range and area, right? You can reach out. Hey, did you have multiple buyers on that property? Were there people that contacted you after the close of escrow or while you were in contract that were interested, right? Reach out to those agents and listings and see if you can find out who those people are. Market to other agents and offices, and the timeline of action steps and events for their listing, right? What does a sample calendar look like? Okay, those are the type of things you should have in your listing presentation. Any questions about that? All right.
No, ma'am.
The 7 steps in the listing process. We're going to start at the top and work our way to the bottom. We are going to complete the pre-listing questionnaire, and we're going to qualify the seller and set that listing appointment. Same thing with our sellers as with our buyers. We want a ready, willing, and able seller. Okay, ready, willing, and able seller. So we want to make sure that we have that before we move forward with that listing appointment. We want to do, step 2 is going to be research and preparation. I'm just going to look, okay, just checking. Research and preparation to make sure that we know what the house is, know where it's located, know what the average sales prices are in that house. If we haven't seen that home yet, we may put together a market analysis for their home with kind of a broad range of, if it needs a lot of work, this is where you're going to be. If if it's all updated and improved and ready to go, here's where your sales price would be, right? So we want kind of that range. You're going to create and deliver a pre-listing package. I highly recommend prior to your listing appointment that you drop off a pre-listing packet, whether it goes in the mail or whether you put it on their doorstep. I always like their doorstep because number one, people ignore their mailboxes, and number two, you can drop it off with like a little pop by, right? So something that, like, if you look up fun listing pop buys on Pinterest, you'll come across some fun ones that talk about, getting their house sold for them. So do something a little fun, a tangible item with that listing presentation, that pre-listing presentation. Step number 4 is conduct the listing presentation and present marketing and pricing strategies. Step 5 is you're going to ask for the listing, complete the listing paperwork, and obtain signatures. Step number 6 is you're going to market and service the listing, communicate, negotiate, and close. And then step number 7, there at the bottom, is our after the sale follow-up system. That's to get reviews, to get referrals, and to get future business. Okay, that's our 7-step listing process. It's okay to say no, right? If you're talking with somebody on the phone and you realize they're not ready, willing, and able, or you're just not somebody you want to work with, totally okay to be like, I only work with qualified and realistic sellers, right? Or maybe you're at their house and we're talking about price range and they're like, well, I know that you say the value is here, but I want to list it way up here. You could be like, it's okay, right? I'm going to choose not to move forward with you because I don't want to disappoint you, right? Say no with grace. I'm afraid we're not the best match for doing business at this time. I know that I will not be able to meet your expectations, and I'd rather turn you down now than disappoint you later. Thank you for your consideration, and I wish you the very best, right? Be the one that stands up and says you're psychopants. It's going to sit on the market for 60 days, right? And that might be with the condition of the property. It might be the price of the property. It may just be that you just don't like the sellers and they're kind of verbally abusive, or they seem like they'd be super high maintenance, more than you want to deal with. It's okay to be like, I think I'm going to choose not to move forward with you. If you'd like, I can refer you to another agent, right? Find somebody they'd work well with. Okay. Any questions about that?
Won't they think that you're some kind of stuck-up jerk for saying that? Or, I mean, how many people have you run across that actually take that to heart and then go, well, you are in the business, so yes, I'll trust your...
Yeah, generally, if you're going to turn them down, oftentimes they're going to come back around. Well, obviously, if it's somebody that's like verbally abusive or way more maintenance than you want to deal with, then you can just out. And I don't really care what they think about me at that point. But yeah, if they have unrealistic expectations of the value of their home or how quickly it's going to sell or whatever that is, and you said, well, then unfortunately, this time I don't think that we should work together because I'm not going to be able to meet your expectations. Oftentimes they're going to come around and be like, oh, like they were really serious about this and I should come back and talk with them. Or maybe they're going to list with somebody else and then that listing is going to expire because again, they're going to go at it from the same mindset. And then you can have that conversation with them, right? Again, you can come back and circle back and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I saw that your house went on the market. I saw that it didn't sell. Are you ready to get your house sold now? Right? So you can always come back to it. But oftentimes, I don't think anybody would think of you as stuck up or snobby. I think it's more like, hey, like I've done the research. I know this market. I know where it's coming from, right? We've already had this conversation. Here's where the price is. And if they're still like, well, we'd really like to price it up here, then you can always choose not to work with them. Or if they're like, well, we don't want to declutter and get rid of all of the junk and the trash that's piled up throughout the house because we're hoarders prior to putting it on the market and we want to list it like, it doesn't have all that junk, then I'm not going to be able to meet your expectations. Right? So I think it would be okay. It's a good, simple way to bow out.
Amy, I just wanted to mention something with that.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you're a newer agent and you really need the business, 9 times out of 10, you're going to take a chance that you're going to be able to work something out anyway. Just because it's like, this is the only client I have right now, so I'm going to do it. But I will say this. I took on a client in August and the CRM, my comparative, my market analysis, said that the house was valued at like, I don't know, it was valued at like 960 or 70 or something like that. And I told them, I said, honestly, or no, I'm sorry, it was valued at 945 or 950. And I said, I don't think that we should go that high. The market is starting to drop significantly because of interest rates, blah, blah, blah. I think we should start at 935. And he said, no, I won't go a dime lower than 950. And I said, well, okay. I said, that's fine, just as long as you agree that we're going to revisit this issue in a couple of weeks if we haven't gotten any, any shows or anything like that. He said, okay, that's fair. The day I went to put it on the market, he said, I changed my mind. I want it at 980. And I said, okay, but we've talked about this. I want to be very clear. We should be starting at about 930, 935 the most. And he said, yeah, I know. And, the market's shifting and blah, blah, blah. I heard everything you said, but I want 980. I said, okay, that's fine. From that point forward, even when I got him to drop the price, accordingly, he never dropped it low enough. So when I said we should start at 930, he wanted to start at 980. By the time I got him to drop the price, he was only willing to go down to 960. And now it should have been on the market for 900. You see what I'm saying? And then when I got him to finally drop it to 930, it really should have been on the market for 875. You see? And so for 6 months, that thing's been sitting on the market and it's not moving. And it's simply because they absolutely refuse to listen to me. It's like, okay. So,
Yeah.
so
right. So now you've spent time, energy, and effort on this listing that hasn't sold, right?
Yep. And money,
and it's
lots of money.
Yeah. And money. So it's sucking up your time. So that's why it's important to go into it feeling like it's okay to say no and it's okay to turn it down, or have it set up with you can have an addendum to your listing agreement or a modification of terms or your other terms on your listing agreement that specify, hey, if we're on the market on this date, on this time, here's where we're going to do our price reduction. So you can pre-plan out those price reductions with them ahead of time. And if we have a listing agreement in place for a certain sales price, you can always say, no, we aren't going to list it for, it's okay to tell somebody no. So be picky, because as Jennifer said, she's lost significant money, time, and energy on this listing. And although we feel desperate at the beginning, like, hey, we'll take anything, that whole listing has now sucked up her time and energy from getting other listings. Right?
Oh, and did you mention it's an hour away?
Yeah. So make good choices. Yeah. And it's okay at some point, like if he said, well, I want to come on at 980, and then he's like, well, I'm willing to drop it to 960. It's okay to be like, at this point, like at any point in that listing, you can cancel that listing agreement. So just so everybody knows, so it's okay if they're still being unreasonable or they come on the market. My favorite is, somebody comes on the market and then they're like 2 weeks later, like they haven't gotten an offer yet. I think we should change the price, because now they're like, well, now people are going to negotiate with me. So now I need to change the price. So I end up back at that number, right? And you can be like, I'm not going to be able to meet your expectations. So we can call it done. Right. Just so you know, in all of my listing agreements, I always put in there, like I pay for the photos, or I might pay for pre-listing inspections, but I always say that the property doesn't sell for any reason, that the seller becomes responsible for those charges. Okay, so that way I'm not taking on that. I have my marketing expenses, but I don't have all those additional costs associated with that listing if they decide to cancel or we decide it's over.
I did exactly that. I made sure that I had that in the listing agreement, because it just covers you, just the gas alone going back and forth is, hundreds of dollars, much less everything else that I did. So yes, absolutely. Huge. Like that's the biggest lesson I learned with this particular one, is that thank God I put that in the fine print, that they would pay me back for expenses and costs, because if I hadn't, I would have been out $2,000.
Yeah. Yep. So just be careful. It's okay to say no. The process, right? So the pre-listing questionnaire is going to be right here. There is a folder that Abby will share the link for when the video gets posted in the description. So you'll be able to find that folder with the seller listing tools. But it is, let's see, not there. I think it's this one right here. The pre-listing questionnaire, right? We want to get these questions answered. We want to find out, are they ready, willing, and able to sell? So we're going to make sure we get their names, their phone numbers. If I share and discuss what makes sense, do you feel comfortable and confident in my system? Will you consider working with me to get your home sold? Right? Is there anything that's going to prevent you from doing that? Do you plan to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Have you tried selling your house before? If yes, why do you think it didn't sell? What made you decide to sell this home? Where will you be moving to, right? Super important answer there, because we want to know if we can pick up the referral on the other side, or if we can represent them as the buyer. How soon do you have to move? If we sold your property in the next 30 days, would that pose a problem for you, right? That's a great question to figure out motivation right there. If I sold your property in the next 30 days, would that pose a problem for you? How much do you think your home, right? It says, how much do you want to list your home for? So how much do you think your home is worth is probably what I would frame that as, because I don't want them getting the mindset that they're going to be they ultimately are going to be the final decision on listing their home, but the embedded command in there, I would rather have it as, how much do you think your home is worth? Or how much do you think your home will sell for, right? So we know if it's realistic going into it. How much do you currently owe on the property? How many bedrooms and bathrooms, square footage you're built? You could always go into it knowing this information too. So you can always just confirm that, yeah, I show that's 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. Is that accurate? Because sometimes the tax records aren't accurate. I have it about 1762 square feet, and then it was built in 1990, and that your lot size is about 1/4 of the acre with a 2-car garage. Is that accurate, right? What is the construction of your home, right? What type of parking does it have? Does it have RV parking? Is it behind the fence, in front of the fence? What other updates have you done to the home? Is there anything positive or negative about the property that you think would affect the value? What is the overall rating of your home on a scale of 1 to 10? What other decision makers that I need to contact prior to are there any other decision makers that I need to contact prior to our meeting? Will the authorized decision maker be present at our appointment, or anything else that you want to share with me, right? So you can either have them fill that out ahead of time, or you can just call them and go through that pre-listing questionnaire with them. And you may want to sound more conversational, but those are the questions that you're looking to get answered as part of that process, because this helps us define what their motivation is, where they're headed. Are they realistic, right? Are they ready, willing, and able to sell? If their house is only worth $935 or $945 and they want to list it at $980, are they willing to sell? Not really. Right? So ready, willing, and able. So this is going to be in that folder as well, this listing, pre-listing questionnaire. So I'd make sure to go through that so that you fully understand where they are at. Any questions about that?
No, ma'am.
All right. Hold on, let me go back to. Dun, dun, dun. So that's gonna complete the pre-listing questionnaire. So you're qualifying that seller, and then you're setting the listing appointment. Now, if I've talked with somebody and I know they're not quite ready to sell, maybe they're like, man, yeah, if you sold in the next 30 days, that wouldn't work because we've got orders from the military to move, and we actually won't move for another 6 months. Then you can be like, perfect, let's come by. I'll do a quick walkthrough of the property. We'll have that conversation. I'm not gonna not build that relationship and not go to that property. I'm still going to work to get that listing agreement signed, or at least solidify that relationship, but I can walk through the house and give them some pointers and suggestions of things they can do in the next 6 months to prepare their home for sale when they're ready to make that jump. Does that make sense to everybody? So
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So if they're not ready right now, then it may be a conversation of just a shorter, 15-20 minute walk through of their property, give them some pointers and suggestions, make some notes, talk with them kind of what your marketing plan looks like, and work to just solidify that relationship. Okay. If they're like, man, you did your research and you really feel like that, that property price point is going to be at $945, like max, and they're thinking, hey, the value of my property is like $960, it may be a good time to be like, hey, can I schedule a time just to walk through it? Because what I have in, my file may be, based on the square footage and what you've explained to me as upgrades, kind of points it a little lower, but I'd like to come walk through and get a good idea of what the house actually looks and feels like. Because there are some homes I've had that where I thought it was kind of lower, and then I go walk through the home and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is way more amazing than you described it as. And you didn't leave out that you had this feature, and it has this, and I do think it's higher than what the other comps point it to. And I think, we could probably stretch it a little ways. So it's okay to make that as well. When we're having that conversation, you don't quite feel like they're ready, willing, and able, go ahead and set that appointment, or let them know that, hey, what I've got for a value is a little bit lower than where you're at, but I'd like to come walk through and see the house. Is that okay? That way you can really kind of put a plan together for them. Your research and preparation, right? Complete that pre-listing questionnaire. Oh, it's still, that didn't open. There we go. If we can't see the home before the appointment, make sure you ask questions. There's a pre-listing questions to the seller. So there's that pre-listing questionnaire, and then there's a whole nother list of questions that you can ask to get a real good idea of what that home looked like. On the inside, what the colors are, the countertops. The other thing that's a really good thing to ask is if they've made any improvements since the last time since they purchased the property. Because if you can go in the MLS and pull up the old listing and look through all the photos, you have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. And if they're like, oh yeah, we completely remodeled the kitchen. If they're like, no, we haven't done anything, then you know that, hey, it's exactly the same as it was 4 years ago, except it's a little worse in condition because there's been more wear and tear, right? So we want to do more research here, especially if you can't walk through that property. The idea is to get a good idea of what the home looks like so that when you're pulling comps, you can have a more accurate price range for those comps. Okay, step 3 is we're going to create and deliver that pre-listing package. Inside that pre-listing package, you should have information about their home, right? That, everything that you've gleaned from them, you're going to put it in a nice format. Like, okay, we talked about the fact that you have updated kitchen, updated whatever. We have RV parking. You have solar that's been paid off. You upgraded your water heater 3 years ago. Whatever that conversation entailed, we're going to summarize that information about their home. You're going to put in your comps or CMA report. I highly recommend calling it like a market analysis of the property instead of a comparative market analysis. It just makes it easier for people to understand. You're going to include your resume. You're going to include a copy of the listing contract, maybe a copy of the TDS or the transfer disclosure statement, and a copy of the SPQ, the seller property questionnaire. And then you're also going to include a cover letter. On the cover letter, I highly recommend that you include with that a confirmation of the date and time of their appointment. Okay. Here's what that cover letter might look like. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Seller, encloses some information I have gathered about your home. I also have included information about myself and my company and the listing contracts for you to review if you choose. Please feel free to review any of the enclosed information ahead of time and note any questions you may have. I look forward to answering all your questions and reviewing this information in detail during our appointment on blank date at blank time. By the way, there are a few things that you may want to have handy for our appointment. A spare key, we will need this for the lockbox. A recent mortgage statement, any HOA information, if that applies. If not, take it out of there. A copy of your trust LLC if the property is held in either. Again, eliminate that if you know it's not, because you should have already asked those questions or looked at the tax records. Again, I look forward to meeting with you on blank date. Please don't hesitate to contact me with questions. Sincerely, Amy Petard, your real estate professional, right? So super easy cover letter that you can utilize to put with that pre-listing packet. And before you go drop that off, to have other people look at your CMA report or tell you what they think the value is going to be, right? Have that trusted. If you've got a script partner or an accountability partner, have somebody else look at it. If you're in the mentor-mentee program, have your mentor look at your comps before you include them to make sure they seem pretty accurate. Also, Sonia McClellan, who used to be our in-house lender, she has a system. You can shoot her over the address and it kicks back kind of a value range for that property as well. So you can always run that through their system as well. So there's a couple different options there to make sure it's accurate. Then, right, the listing process, you're going to determine an accurate price range would be the next thing. We'll go into this more detailed after I finish up here, but just some things to keep in mind. You're always going to suggest a range, never a single price. Okay, always suggest a range, and you're going to think like a buyer. Oftentimes when I pull a CMA report, I'm going to look at all the homes in that neighborhood that have sold. I'm also looking what's on the market currently and what's in contract. How long has the properties been on the market? Who's going to be our competition, right? Who am I pricing it against? And please do not use your price per square foot to determine a listing price. Okay, it's a bad idea because your smallest homes in the neighborhoods are always going to sell for a higher price per square foot than the largest home in the neighborhood, which is always going to sell at a lower price per square foot than those middle of the road homes. So it's just not an accurate way, and it doesn't take into account updates or upgrades or yard size or pools or any of those things. So we want to make sure that we want to focus in more on the active and sold properties to determine that price. Practice, right? Practice running CMA reports. We want to know what kind of market we're in, right? So we know exactly how that should be priced. Is it a seller's market? Are sellers in control? Is it a balanced market or is it a buyer's market? This slide is typical of a market. If you have 1 to 5 months of inventory, it's generally a seller's market. 6 months is generally considered a balanced market, and a buyer's market is 7 to 12 months worth of inventory. That being said, the market that we are in now is neither a buyer's market nor a seller's market. It's a funky market. We've got like 2.5 months of inventory because there's so few buyers in the market. So it would technically be a seller's market, but because the drop off of buyers currently, which are starting to step up again, it's more of a buyer's market. So it's just kind of funky. So just kind of know and understand, maybe have some conversations with some other agents. If you're not sure exactly what the market's looking like right now, ask them what their experience is, other agents in the office that have current listings. Have conversations with them. How many buyers have they had through? What kind of activity have they had? All those questions. Okay. So that's how you're going to move through. And then once it just sets you up for the listing presentation in here, it doesn't actually go through it. So just know that when you get to the property, your goal is to build relationship and have conversation with your potential clients. And we want to talk more about their motivation. I think we go more into the actual listing presentation in the next session, maybe. If not, I'll make sure that we cover that. And are you guys, here, let me show you what's in the folder. So there's a folder, it's got copies of the listing presentation in the folder. It always also has the copy of that pre-listing questionnaire to the seller, those things that we'd want to find out about their property, as well as a copy of that other questionnaire that we went over, this one here. So it's got some tools in there for you. Any questions before we dive into a CMA?
Do you recommend that they do improvements prior to, or would you want just for them to clean it up and let the new buyer make their own improvements?
It really depends on what they're hoping to sell the house for and what kind of improvements are needed and what their time frame looks like, right? So there's a lot of factors that factor in. If you've got somebody that's like, man, we just need to get this house sold, then absolutely, maybe some little like things they could take care of on a weekend, I might recommend that they try to take care of. It also depends on how handy they are. But if they need to get it sold, I'm going to tell them what the price is as is. And oftentimes I'm going to let them know, right? Like, hey, the house as is going to be in this value range. If you wanted to do a couple of updates and upgrades, then we'd be looking closer to this price range. And then you've got to weigh your options, right? If somebody's going to do some work themselves, then their dollars go a lot further than if they have to pay somebody to do it. And are we going to sit and not go on the market for 3 months while they do these repairs and improvements, only then to not really have a gain, is what they're going to put into it, what they're going to get out of it, and what's the market going to look like in 3 months? So you just have to be really careful and take it on a case-by-case basis. How'd you like that for a not answer?
That was a perfect not answer.
Okay, you're welcome. It really varies, right?
Yeah, because I have another client. She wants to put her house on the market. So, we went over there. I took people over to give her bids, and they gave her the bids, and she's just like, I'm going to talk it over with my brother-in-law. And I'm like, okay, well, are you going to, what do you want? Do you want to do it? Do you want to take the time to, or do you just want to list it and see where it goes? And maybe let somebody else do their own imagination and, footprint on this.
Yeah.
So we're still waiting.
Still waiting. I mean, homes always sell better and easier the more upgraded they are, but that's not always in the best interest of the seller either, right? So we have to
I
weigh
mean,
it
she
all
has
in.
she has a nice pool in the backyard,
Yeah.
but it consumes the whole backyard.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, okay.
All right. So yeah, so on
I
upgrades
would
and
mention,
updates.
I just wanted
Oh,
to
go ahead.
mention that right quick.
Yeah.
One of my listings was all original, everything from 1980. And that was very, very difficult because the second people would walk in, they'd go, "Oh, hell no." And they turn around and walk out, right? And so it really made it very difficult. But the sellers weren't willing to drop it as low as they needed to in order to do the upgrades. But this is something that I usually caution my clients about, though, as well, is that clients are a lot of times under the impression that if they go and put 50 grand into upgrades or 75 grand into upgrades, then they're going to be able to add that to the purchase price when they put it back on the market and make their money back. That is not necessarily the case. And so it's really important that they understand that if you're having that conversation and they're saying, I think we're just going to go ahead and do the upgrades and then we'll put it on the market. If you need to really make it clear that the market, don't price yourself out of the market, because you can't go spend 100 grand here and think you're going to make it back when you sell the house,
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's
And
important.
that's why it's important to always go at it with, here in your current value, here's what I would recommend listing. Here's what I'm estimating is kind of the price range that we would need to be at in order to get the property sold. If you updated the kitchen and the bathrooms and redid the floors, here's what I'm thinking you would sell it at. And we've got to figure out what that cost is to get it to that point, to see if that even makes sense, right? So you always lay that out before them, before they have time to really kind of even think about it and process it, so they can see the difference. So I usually go at it from that. So oftentimes with my initial pre-listing presentation or my pre-listing packet, it's going to have that range in there, and it's going to explain that, hey, if your home doesn't have a lot of updates or needs a lot of repairs and work to it, we're going to be closer to that lower end. And if it's fully updated and upgraded, then you'd be closer to that upper end. And that way people kind of have that idea going into it of what we're expecting. It also helps to have that conversation with them ahead of time with that pre-listing questionnaire of, what do you think your home is worth in its current condition? Because now we can go into it with knowing where they think their value is, and we can tackle it head on, rather than kind of being sideswiped by it when we go in for that listing presentation. So if they're like, man, well, I think my home's worth 650,000, and you look at comps and you're like, well, if it was completely updated and renovated, then maybe 650, otherwise we're going to be closer to 600. Then we can come in it and you can, approach it with, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, like, I know that when we talked, you said that you thought the value of your home was going to be right around 650,000. And if your home was, updated and upgraded, and maybe even bring them some examples, right, of homes that have sold in that price range and what they look like. And then, ask them, do you think your home is the same as this level of home? And they're gonna be like, oh no, like our carpet's worn and like the paint's bright yellow, and right. And they might like realize it for themselves. And you can be like, well, if you want to do those updates and upgrades before we go on the market, then we'll be closer to that price range. Otherwise, we're looking at here, right? So just being proactive in that approach and kind of knowing what they're thinking, and then never hesitate to not only bring that market analysis report that we're going to go over here in a second, but also bring some interior photos of those other homes, like blow some up so they have some good idea of what the interior of those properties look like, or bring your computer with you so you can open it up and have those listings in front of you so they can actually scroll through the pictures and compare them to your house, right? If we're looking at the kitchen of the other house, you may even like put 3 kitchen pictures side by side, not including theirs, but maybe the comps, and say, your kitchen or this kitchen, which one would you rather have? Well, I'd rather have that one there. Ours needs updated. Yeah, it does. And this home sold for 650,000 with a completely updated kitchen, right? So we're going to help them to draw their own conclusions in that way and point them in that direction. Does that make sense?
Completely.
All right. Fabulous. So to do a market analysis, Barry's is really handy because it gives us a cloud CMA report. But to get to the cloud CMA report, I'll show you what my method is. I always go into searches to do a CMA report, and I go into the interactive map. If you talk to me enough, you will find that my interactive map search is my favorite search in our Berries portal. And I may even want to open up a second screen here to find the listing, right? So I can pull up a previous listing of the property. So if I'm going to pull up a CMA report, give me just a second here. Nope. Hold on. I was just
I have an
looking
address for you. I have an
You
address
have
for
an
you.
address. All right, give me an address.
699 El Camino Avenue in Sacramento.
Nope.
El Camino. Like the
El.
car. El
L-E-L.
Camino. Yeah, the bottom ones
Is it,
don't have it.
is
It's
it
a
a
new listing.
newer? Oh, I put El Camino, but it didn't pull anything up. Is it a newer home?
It's an investment property. Two.
No, hold on. Let me look
threes.
under residential income.
Right there
699
on the
El
bottom.
Camino.
Right there on the
Ta-da.
bottom, active, the active one.
Oh. All right. So if I was looking to list this property, it probably wouldn't show up as active, but I would look at those previous listings and find the most recent listing of it so that I can pull it up and see the photos of the property, right? That's my goal, is I want to see what the inside looks like and then compare it to what the seller told me that property was, whether it's been updated or not. And if I ask them the question, like, have you updated this property since you purchased it? Then I have a pretty good idea of whether it looks like this or whether it looks like somebody else's, right? Like they've done a bunch of upgrades to it since this. Okay. Then what I would do, and this one may not be a good example for it because it is a multi-unit property. What is it? Is it a triplex?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to show you how to pull a CMA on this one because this one's going to be hard to pull a CMA on. So it's not a good example.
280 Marna.
Oh, look at you. You're like, let me give you another one. 280
Marna. M-A-R-N-A.
All right. In Vacaville?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm just going to pull one of these up. Oh, it does have the dates over there. Let's see. This one's in 2015, 2013, and 2012. So we're going to zip back to this 2015. Oh, super cute property. Look at it. It's got the pool and the nice closed off kitchen. Right. Super cute. Kitchen hasn't been updated. So I would have a conversation, right? Know if they did the updates in the kitchen or, if they'd made any changes since 2015. If they're like, no, we haven't done anything to the property since 2015, then I know that, gosh, this carpet's probably pretty worn. It doesn't have, hard floors. So the carpet's probably worn. If they haven't painted it, I know they've got like a color splash of, walls in each room. So this gives me a pretty good idea of what the condition of the property could be and what that property looks like. It also gives me the square footage, bedrooms, and bath counts. So I opened that second window just by hitting the little pop-up here in the upper right-hand corner, gave me a second window so I can always toggle back to that property. Now on my interactive map, I'm going to plug in 280 Marna, which is going to center my map on that location. I'm going to leave that little pin on the map so that even if I zoom out, I can still see exactly where that's at. And because I know Vacaville, I know what's on this side of the canal is different than what's on the other side of the canal. And once you pass this park, it's kind of different than over here, but we also don't want to cross Alamo. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to go draw. Hold on, I did that quick. I'm going to go draw, and then I'm going to select the little triangle with the dots. And I'm going to start just by selecting this little area. Maybe I go up. Now I'm going to stop right here. I'm just going to come right across the park over to here. So I'm going to start just with this very specific neighborhood. I always start with the very specific neighborhood, and then I expand my search if I need to. Then I'm going to go into my search criteria. I'm going to come down here to my statuses and I'm going to select, I want any coming soon. I want any contingents, any pendings, and I want closed sales generally for the last 3 months. So this is now February 1st. So I want January, December, and November. So I'm going to come back to like November 1st. And if all of my closed sales vanish, then I can make one of two decisions. I can either go back further and close sales, or I can extend my search out further. So I'm going to go back a month and close sales, see if anything pops up. Those are the only criteria. I don't have anything to do with square footage or anything yet. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And then I'm going to expand my search, right? So I'm going to come a little further into, I'm going to go draw. I'm going to make a second polygon here, and I'm just going to come up to Arlington Park, just to try to get a better grasp on that area. That brings me a few others. This area here, this Farmington Dream Street, I know that those are mostly, there's that HOA in there, right? Those Dream Street properties in here, but the outside circle isn't so much. So I may try to include some of those properties as well. So we may come in here and follow Farmington. This is why I like this little draw tool, because I can just plug right along here and include some of those properties to see if anything pops up there as well. So now I've got some properties that have popped up. I can tell what these properties are by their color coding. So I know the red ones are sold, green ones are pending, and blue ones are either active or contingent. If I go back to my search criteria, if you're like, Amy, how did you know that? See here, it matches the colors here. So closed is red, pending is green, active and contingent are blue. And if there was a coming soon, it would be this orange color. Okay. From here, I'm going to go over here to this display, and I'm going to go to the one line grid, because now I want to see the comparison of these properties and see what we got going on. So I know that the subject property is 1,200 square feet. So I usually start by clicking on the square foot column, which puts these in order. In fact, this Kendrick one, this 304 Kendrick, is the exact same square footage. It's probably the exact same floor plan. So I'm going to start there with that one and click on it to see what that property looks like, because it is pending. Looks like it was on the market for 64 days. This property has solar. It's got a pretty front yard. When we go in and look at the house, it's got some hardwood floors. Looks like it's got some upgraded windows at some point. It's got tile floors in the kitchen. Let's see if they did anything with that kitchen. They did not. So it's still got the closed off kitchen. That's good that it still has the closed off kitchen, because our property that we're looking at also has that closed off kitchen, which is very typical of this floor plan. Back in the days when people liked compartmentalized homes. Although the kitchen is updated. So see, it's a nice updated kitchen, even though it's still closed off. So this one's going to be like my #1 comp at 569. And I'm going to know that we're not going to hit this 569 #1. It's probably not in contract at 569 because that's what it was listed at. But this gives me a good example. So it's probably a little lower than this. And then we're going to take some money off because of the fact that our home isn't updated. Although the home that we're looking at does have a pool, and this one does not have a pool. Okay. So that's going to add some value as well. It's got a nice patio cover and some grass, but no pool. So, right. So it may balance out with the pool versus the updates, but we're going to get a better idea. So we're going to go back to list. So we like that one. So I'm going to check that box once it shows up here. I think it resorted my properties. When we're looking at comps, we're trying to compare apples to apples. So like a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home that doesn't really compare to a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. So we're not worried about that. 3- and 4-bedroom homes, we can compare those. We're really thinking like, if we're thinking like a buyer, and what other homes would a buyer be interested in? If they're looking at a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, they're probably not looking at a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom. So we're not going to worry about that one. We like this Kendrick property because it's the same floor plan. These Morning Glory and Youngdale, I probably like those as well, even though they're in a slightly different neighborhood. This Farmington one might be a good one as well, so we're going to select that one. Let's see, we've got Silver Top Way, and keep in mind too that our subject property is about 12, almost 1,300 square feet. We don't want to go more than if we can help it, we want to stay within a 200 to 300 square feet and the size of the subject property. But even further than that, I'm thinking if somebody's buying a 1,200 square foot home, they're probably not also looking at like a 16 or a 1,700 square foot home, right? That's probably bigger. That's a different buyer that's looking at those homes. So I'm probably eliminating those. Although these are good examples because even though they're bigger, we're going to go ahead and pull those in. I like their price range. Okay. This auction property, I'm going to leave it off because it's listed as an auction and people look at those differently. Just like if it was like a REO property, people sometimes look at those differently. So, this poor 100 Caldwell, it's been for sale a lot. So those are my listings I'm going to go with for now without even really looking at them. If I wanted to, really narrow it down, then what I could do is I could do a couple of different options. One, I could go back to the map view with all the listings. And here on my map view with all the listings, it's going to show me my check boxes. And here I can determine which one's in the neighborhood versus not in the neighborhood. And what do I need to eliminate versus not, or I can always click on them and look at the property as well. That one's actually a decent one. So we'll leave that one in there. So right, so you can sort it that way as well and look at it. The other thing that you can do is if I was in that one line grid. Bye, Jennifer. Have fun. It's recorded, so you can always catch this later on the recording. Is we can always come up here and hit map up here as well. If I hit map up here, it's just going to map the listings that I have check marked. So it's going to help narrow in on just those check marks, which is kind of helpful as well. And then I have options here as well. It allows me to kind of look at those and make sure they're all kind of good matches. Make sure there's not anything that's scary. Hold on, I'm just looking at that one again. All right. Right. So we're just going to double check, make sure nothing's too scary or out of whack that shouldn't be there. Oh, I'm not really a fan of that Torrey Pines, so I'm going to uncheck that one, which is going to take it off the list. It's in that Torrey Pines is in a small little HOA community, so that's why I took that one off. It's Youngsdale property actually is pretty good. It said 2, so if I click on it, it's because 2 properties were too close together for the check boxes to show up. So it's going to show those as well. All right, so I feel like all these are good examples. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back out. Number one, I would probably create a cart. So I would probably come up here and hit more. Oh, it doesn't give my option from there. Let's go back to our one line grid from there because I want to save those listings that I have checked as a cart. So from here, we're going to hit add to cart. I'm going to create a new cart by just putting add new cart. I'm going to enter cart name as Marna, M-A-R-N-A comps, right? So that I can find those later and I'm going to add those to that basket. From here, you can go to the CMA report as well. I just want those to be easily accessible in the future. So that just allows me to come up to carts and find those properties in the future. But from here, I can also go to the CMA report. So I just click CMA.
Didn't you take that Torrey Pines one off though? But it was still checked.
Oh, was it? Well, I'll eliminate it here in a minute then.
Okay.
It's because I was in the routing map. It was a little different. From the CMA link, you have the option to choose Cloud CMA or the Berry CMA options. Cloud CMA is a fabulous option. So I just clicked on that hyperlink where it takes me to Cloud CMA, which is a free option that we get through Berry's. From here, you can name the report. We're going to call it Anastasia. And you can add some private notes. Here's where you could enter in that address. What was it? Was it 280?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If you plug in the address, it auto populates the information. Sometimes it's not completely accurate, so just make sure it's in there and accurate. And then what we do is we hit fetch. Oh, down here, here's where it pulls over the listings that I hand selected in the MLS. Right here on this left-hand side. On the right side, it's got quick and dirty. It'll pull its own comps. I don't like that. I like to use the ones that I just selected. And then we just hit fetch listings. Here's where you can put a price range on there if you wanted to, but here's where it's got all those listings. So like Torrey Pines, we wanted to eliminate and it included it anyways. So from here, I can just uncheck this box and then it takes it out of the mix. I don't want it to include this. You can also change how they're sorted. Like, do you want it sorted by days on market, list date, list price, manually, price, sold date, sold price, square footage. There's so many options. We're gonna go days on market. Okay. From here, we just go into customize reports. This allows you to handpick what goes into your report here. If you hover over it or click the little eyeball, it'll show you the PDF preview of what that page looks like, so you can decide whether you want to include it or not. So you should spend some time in here just playing with it before you have a CMA to do. So that you can see what you want to include and what you don't. They have a bunch of standard features and then a bunch of stuff that you can, pay money for, but their standard features are very sufficient. So I don't. All right, that's taking a long time right now. My computer's thinking too hard. Here's where you can change your theme to color. So I have it like a modern black and gold, no cover, my default fonts, what layout I want, and my default template. It's got a title page, mappable listings, summary of comparable properties. It's got the listings, comparable property statistics. I have my online valuation analysis and my sold property analysis. Here's all your other like free pages are up here. You've got cover letter, agent resume, recent sales, our company, what is a CMA, contact me, right? I don't know what this title fly report is. Maybe let's add that just for kicks. I think it goes over the property information, probably. Things that you can add from the listings. This listing chapter is just like a title page. You've got analytics in here. This again, title page, suggested list price. If you made a suggested list price, include that. Time to sell, average price per square foot, right? So it's got all sorts of stuff in here that you could include if you wanted to. I like to keep it simple. We're going to hit publish report. From here, it's going to create that report. It's going to give you some options once it's published, because you can email the report, you can get a PDF, or you can view live. So if you view it live, it makes it like a PowerPoint presentation that you could present. Look at that. Isn't that cute? It's got all that stuff in there, although it includes things that I didn't include in the PowerPoint, which is why I usually like PDF. I'm going to hit view PDF now. Here's what that CMA would look like. And like I said, you want to go in there and kind of play with it. But this is how you would get to that. It's got a map of all of them. They're color coded so they can see, and numbered so they can see which one refers to what. It's got their property information. Here's the sold listings. The average sales price is $561. Pended listings, the average is $533. Comparable properties, it's got photo there and all the stats and details. Here's some more. Here's the statistics, right? The sold, the average price, average days on market versus pended, it's 61. The online value analysis, I think this is good because it points out, they're going to look at Zillow. It points out how accurate it is, right? That it listed at, and these actually sold a little higher, where these estimates are lower and it's not selling. So, right, that gives you an opportunity to be like, the market's changing. So anyways, so there's kind of how that cloud CMA works. Now going back to that property, if I were to look at it, oops, let me get back out of there. The other thing that I probably would, because the pending property has the pool, or not the pending property, the potential listing has a pool. I would probably come back in here and go revise criteria. Oops, I didn't mean to check all of those. We'll fix that in a minute. And come down here to pool. If you don't have pool in your search options, you can go to fields and you can add pool in there. Let's see if any of these listings have a pool. But hold on, I've just got to uncheck all the boxes real quick. Because again, we like to compare apples to apples. So I'm usually looking for other properties with a pool. Now, if we go back to map view. There we go. None of them had a pool. So if they didn't, none of those had a pool and I want an accurate amount of value, I'm going to hit edit. I'm going to delete all of my boxes. And now I'm just looking for properties with pools in Vacaville. And I'm going to come down here probably to our bathrooms, and we want to make sure we have at least 2 total bathrooms. And living area, I'm going to go 1,200 square feet. And remember I said you probably don't want to go more than 200 to 300 square feet, smaller or bigger than the subject property. Well, in this case, the property is 1,276. So somebody who's getting like a 1,300 square foot home probably isn't going to be looking at something smaller than 1,200 square feet. And they're probably looking maybe up to 1,600 square feet. This one doesn't count because it's part of the HOA. This one might be a decent one though. So I may pull some of these other comps into my packet because I really do want to compare apples to apples. And so I want to look and see what else is out there. This is also pulling some condos. So I'm going to come back into the search criteria and go subtypes and go, I just want single family residences. But so I may open this one and check this box. It's close in square footage. It has a pool. This one, let's see if this one, that one's part of the HOA. We don't want that one because that's a different type of pool. Wow, it's a sad day for pools in Vacaville. Royal Oaks. And maybe this, oh, I know who's in contract on that Richard Place one. All right, so I may pull some of those over with pools in them just to get a better idea of what that value is. Does that make sense? Do I still have Anastasia? Oh, I just have Lonnie too. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
All right. I'm probably going to take now, because from here you can go checked and you can hit add to cart. So I can go to add to existing cart, and then I can come down here and find those Marna comps. See, I do this a lot. I've got comps everywhere. Where are my, did it not, I know it saved it somewhere. Well, that's sad. Huh. All right, let's go to add to new cart and go Myrna. I know it already exists. Add to existing cart. Why does it hate me? Does somebody else see it? Am I missing it? It should be right in here. All right, we're gonna hit Marna comps 2. Add. So add that in there. Now if I go into carts, we're gonna find that hidden cart. Marna comps and Marna comps 2. So now I'm gonna take these. We're gonna go like this. We're gonna hit add to cart, add to existing cart. Now we're gonna go find the real cart and put them all together. There we go. All right. So now I could repull if I go back into Marna comps. Now those 3 with the pool are in there. See, they've got the check boxes in there. We
Oh,
can
look,
take
there's mine, Royal Oaks.
Royal Oaks. We can take this Torrey Pines and we can kick it out by just hitting the box and hitting remove checked. Goodbye. And now we have our comps again in here. Royal Oaks had a pool, so it's a good comp. The Richard Place,
Amapola's kind of over by the CMF, so that
It
one
is-
might be. Is that one
It
too
is,
far
but
away?
well, so I pulled 3 of them that had pools. So this was one of the ones that had a pool. So it was a similar in
Gotcha.
square foot with a pool. So it was a good example of kind of what that pool would look like. And again, we want to take into account that neighborhood as well. But when we look at this one, right? So this one's, when we think about pool, it's got a closed off kitchen. The kitchen has tile. So, right. So where we had that one that was in the same neighborhood that was also kind of in that 560 range, but was completely updated with no pool versus not updated with a pool. This one's a good justification for kind of being in that same price range. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's kind of, there's no exact science to comps because obviously every house is different and it varies just a little bit. But my goal is I'm going to dive into Barry's. I'm going to do that interactive map search. I'm going to start within that neighborhood. I'm going to look for similar properties that have sold within the last 3 months. I may back it out to 4 months if there's not a lot of inventory. And then if there's something unique about the property or I don't have enough comps, then I'm going to widen my search out where like this one, I'm like, well, I want some comps that have a pool. And this one's good because the pool takes up the whole backyard, right? So it's a very similar comp to that property in that it's got a pool. It's actually got a little bit more yard maybe than the subject property, but it's got that pool, similar in square footage, similar in updates. It's a little, this one has like hard floors, which makes it a little nicer as far as updates go, but this other one's in a better location. So it's kind of it cancels each other out. So I would absolutely use this one as a comp as far as pricing goes to kind of justify where I think it should go, which is probably in that like 550 range. I'd probably list it somewhere between 550 and 560 based on the comps. And that's just looking at, right, if we go back to the list. If we look at it, square footage, we've got this one pending at 569. I may even make a call to that agent and be like, hey, I've got a listing getting ready to come on in the same neighborhood as your Kendrick Lane property. And I was curious if you'd be willing to share with me what you're in contract at and when you're planning to close. Sometimes agents will and sometimes they won't. They'll usually tell you when they're planning to close, if nothing else. But this one's probably pretty close because it went pending on the 21st. Right. So it just pinpoints kind of in that range, right? You've got a whole range of properties with no rhyme or reason to them as far as sales prices. Your Royal Oaks was slightly larger than the Marna property, but also had a pool, right? So had updates. Pool. Nice big yard, but it was a different neighborhood too. So you always have to take that into account, but this is a good comp to justify them listing it somewhere in that like 550 to 560 range is probably what I would recommend because we don't want to price over the market. Okay. And that's also why I recommend anytime you do comps, especially when you're new, run it by somebody, pull what you think it is, pull the comps, shoot over, the property details and all the comps you've picked and what you think you would list it as price range wise, and then see what somebody else thinks about it. Any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Lonnie, any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fabulous. Have a great day. I'm done for today. Oh, log your attendance. Abby just posted the link for that. So click on that link in the chat box. And then I'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. We'll be going over all the free tools that we have through like Barry's and Car and such. So we'll be talking about like home light listing management and Cloud CMA may have been on our list. So I may not touch on that one very in-depthly, but there's a bunch of tools in there. I was trying to think what else. Oh, Glide, and some other things that we have at our fingertips to make your job easier.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep, absolutely. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
All right, bye.